So, hey, what's going on?
Hello, kitties.
And
Greetings, everyone, from
non-kitties.
the Boomers.
Because we're not only here appealing to the kids. In fact, if you're a kid and you're under 13, don't tune into this. It's not for you. Anyway, if you're listening, go on ahead. It's fine. We'll keep it like, I don't know, rated R.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in case you
well,
didn't get the message, fuck off.
fuck off. This is not for you. Anyway, so that's funny. I recently rewatched the first Terminator film, by the way, and I know we're not here to talk about that, but it's on Amazon Prime streaming. So if you have Amazon Prime, there's something you can watch as well. Um, yeah. So today we're just going to talk about the Book of Boba Fett. Now I don't remember the last thing we talked about in this series. But where did we leave off? I don't remember. Maybe it doesn't even matter. Because I think that the last time we talked, it was about what did we talk about? Like how the
How to basically become Mandalorian season 2.5.
I think so.
Yeah, because I think we left off with what episode 5
6.
and 6.
Or did we talk about?
I don't think we did. We talked about episode 5.
Yeah, because in 6 and 7, the last two episodes we kind of talked to on the side, but now this is where we're finally sharing.
It just seems like we already talked about 6. Gotcha.
Yeah, we're just sharing our thoughts with the audience and the season as a whole. So, yeah, we last time we comboed on the podcast, we talked about how Boba Fett got his show jacked.
Yeah.
Well, and you wouldn't be wrong. Episode 5 was essentially, well, it's Mandalorian, right? I mean, it's, but there's some important stuff that happened in episode 5. So, I mean, that's what we were kind of talking about. I think, it's like, hey, we've got the Darksaber, we've got all the background set up and all that, and then, and it's kind of a, and it's what at the end, Fennec Shan shows up, which is like literally our only reference to the show.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So, and says, "Got a job. Bubba's got a job for you." But I did like all of the stuff, and I don't think it was a bad episode or anything like that. Episode 5 or chapter 5, if you will.
Well, I think that the big problem with this is that this is arguably one of the most enjoyable parts of the season so far.
Ooh,
and that's kind of a problem when your guest star not just shows up to hijack your show. It's one thing when it does so to destroy the momentum that's been building up, but it's another when it's like, wow, this is actually really entertaining, and it's like, oh, huh. It's like, why am I enjoying this a lot more than what we've been getting so far? Because I'm not saying that the first 4 episodes were bad, but it's like, I don't know, it's like they kind of suffer in comparison to the world building that was that was done here.
Yeah, and you get your whole well, here's Mando slaughtering everyone here, carrying another bounty. It's just like crazy, right? And wielding the Darksaber like a clown. Like he does use it effectively, but then he hurts himself. Like he pretty much slices like a little bit of his leg off. I mean, it's like just of his thigh or whatever.
Yeah, he nicks his thigh.
Yeah. So
fried Mando thigh. When's the recipe for that coming to the Star Wars cookie?
Yep. But interestingly enough, in this episode, because I don't think we've really talked about this episode, so even if we have, it's good to recap this. It's a great episode of Mandalorian, I'd have to say, and it does fit in here a bit, I guess. I mean, I don't know if maybe this, if they had decided to start the Mandalorian, it's just weird. Where would they have put this in the Mandalorian? like at the end of the last season, like as the next episode, it's hard to say,
Well, I think one thing I can appreciate with Boba getting his show jacked is that they're building up for Mando season 3, and kind of like they're kind of setting it up, but also it kind of coincides with where he's at in his storyline at this point in his life, which is helping out meeting Boba Fett. So I appreciate that they did it within this series rather than do some backtracking in Mandalorian season 3, which we would presume would be between 7 to 10 episodes. Once we get Mandalorian season 3, we can kind of jump into the core of the storyline, which we're not 100% sure what it is, but we can take our best guess and allude that it's going to have to deal with that the pools in the mining area where he needs to go to redeem his Mandalorian armor. Honor, not armor, but honor.
Oh yeah, right, under Mandalore, which
Yeah,
I think we have a pretty good idea of what it looks like, right?
kind of. I mean, we got that.
We don't really know. We just know that there's things that have happened. By the way,
Right.
and I'd have to say, this episode does do a good job of like giving us more of that story, not Boba Fett's story, but that story.
Right. Of Mandalore as a whole.
Yeah.
And also illustrating there's like a split between like different factions of Mandalorians, because the armorer, she did not seem to share any love for Bo-Katan, like based on her little speech here. Because my guess is that season 3 is going to be about the retaking of Mandalore, but at the same time, I get the feeling that half of the season is probably going to be dedicated to that, and then other half is just going to be dealing with the fallout, because once all the Mandalorian factions have come together to retake Mandalore, well, now they've got to actually decide who's going to actually rule it, and that's when the knives are going to come out.
Right. And if you want to get technical, I guess according to the law, like that who wields the Darksaber, which currently is Din, technically has that right to rule.
Interesting point, because we find out that that there's only of the sect, or whatever you want to call them, there's only 3 of them, and I don't remember we ever got a name for the big guy who's played by Jon Favreau, ironically, but we find out that he is in the House of Islam. Now that's important, right, man? Right, man.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like he's like, hey, that belongs to us. And he's like, you want to challenge me? Yeah.
Because his ancestor is the one who forged that Darksaber.
Yeah.
And he felt that it was his right that it be his, and he ruled Mandalore, and thus that's where he challenged Din. And even though Din isn't proficient with the Darksaber as of yet, he did demonstrate tenacity, and despite him kind of falling from the rules of Mandalore, like he respects the culture, and he honors the culture and knows that this is the way. And so through that's why I feel he won. Like his tenacity is what got him through that battle, and technically speaking, he is the wielder of the Darksaber, so he has the right to rule Mandalore according to traditional Mandalorian law.
Yeah, but then the armorer brings up the old, like, have you ever removed your helmet? And
Yep.
it's like that victory just turns to ash right there.
It does. And so and so with that means, like, okay, so since you're no longer quote unquote a Mandalorian, like, you technically don't have the right to rule, nor do you really have the right to the Darksaber. But at the same time, the Darksaber can only be claimed through victory in battle. So, that's why I feel like Din in season 3 is going to go to Mandalore to redeem himself and reclaim his Mandalorian heritage. Not necessarily for the sake of being able to rule, but I mean, he's a Mandalorian, bless you. he's a Mandalorian, and he knows the law, and he wants to respect it, even though he had to do some things in order to go against it to protect those he cares about.
So interesting points here. Who did he get it from? Moff Gideon. Why did he have it? We're still missing that piece.
And I'm hoping we find out more about that too.
And we did get a piece of the Night of 1,000 Tears in this. That was eerily a lot like, did you guys not get like Terminator vibes out of that?
I did, yeah. When you see like a bunch of battle droids like just dropping down, like raining bombs and lasers on the whole planet.
It almost look like nuclear bombs. Almost remind me in some ways of like either like Battlestar Galactica when they're when the Cylons in the new Battlestar Galactica when the Cylons are nuking the colonies. I mean they look like nukes, bro. There's that, and then the whole like the K2SO droids, which I think they're all like K2SO droids. But the one that was played by Alan Tudyk in the Rogue One, But here we are, we're seeing them, like just wiping out all the Mandalorians on the surface. It's just like you see like helmets, skulls, it's like it just had this like weird vibe, like Terminator vibe to it to me, and it was just kind of interesting. I was like, whoa, so what happened? All right. Those explosions look suspiciously like nuclear explosions. I've never heard them use like using nuclear bombs like in Star Wars. Or maybe they just call them something different, right? So, and maybe if they did use something like that, like they used some kind of weapon that was similar to it, that's the reason why the K2SO robots and the probe droids were just, like hunting down, what was left of the population on the planet. Night of 1,000 Tears, right? So that kind of a thing.
Yeah, so definitely like episode 5 was just kind of like that interesting introductory into setting up Din's next objective. At least that's what I got out of it. And obviously, setting up a new ship, setting up a new direction and path, and of course, like we know that there can't be a Mandalorian show without good old little Grogu. And so
and we look at like he goes to what's her name, Peli's like place in Mos Espa, is it? And that's when they refurbish the Naboo starfighter for him.
Yep.
And when they're done with it, it's like it's got the little dome where the droid, the astromech would be, right? So anyway,
and she took that out because she knows she doesn't like droids. But we all know who's going to go in there.
Yeah.
So insane. So cool stuff. But I think this episode gives me, I agree with you, some real interesting threads that they can pull on, for maybe the Mandalorian, like restoring things. You never know, right? Like maybe it's like he's like the chosen one for the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
you just don't know. You don't know, right?
Yeah, but I know what you mean, but I don't see them like putting him as like the leader of all Mandalorians, because that seems like a really restrictive story direction for the character, since like the first 2 seasons basically established him as like as a wanderer of the cosmos, just doing odd jobs here and there, like standard Western hero. And so I guess he's gonna find like season 3 is probably also gonna involve him determining who he's gonna like pass on the Darksaber to, or lose gracefully in martial combat.
Right. So there's the thing, right? Has to be won in combat. And while he did not kill Moff Gideon, he got it righteously. So, well, by the way, we'll probably see that.
Yeah, it'd be something if Moff Gideon found a way to escape like Alliance custody and find his way back to Mandalore while this is all fighting to claim set himself up as the leader of all Mandalorians now.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm not saying it can't happen, but it'd be really unlikely and kind of a weird direction for them to take.
Well, let's see what they do. So, yep. Yeah. So anyway, good stuff in that episode.
And they continue it on into episode 6, which
No, that's
Yeah.
where
still, like all about. Well, it's not all about Mando this time. It's also about Grogu as well, and
yeah,
his new Jedi Master.
that's where it really got popping with the cuteness and the merchandising and just the advertising. It's like, oh man, to see what they did with Luke as far as his facial expressions, because I think didn't you send us that video, John, where like they hired some YouTubers who were really good at deep fakes to redo his look in episode
Yep.
6?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's right.
so it's like we get to see more of Luke, and of course, like me personally, it's like that's one thing I've always wanted to see with the Return of the Jedi follow up was more of his exploits as a Jedi Master, and with these deep fakes, I hope that we get a little bit more of that in some sort of capacity, maybe besides the Mandalorian, but yeah, here we get to see him kind of establish his new Jedi school and having Grogu as his first official student.
Yeah, exactly. But don't forget how the title of this episode actually is. It is, I believe it's, what is it? Out of the desert comes a stranger or something like that. And who do
Okay.
we open up with? We open with Cobb.
Good old Cobb Van.
That's right. I think it's a misnomer or a double meaning there, though, because that's not really the stranger that comes out of the desert.
Nope.
So the stranger that comes out of the desert is actually
Cad Bane,
which was another surprising cameo / character from the Star Wars universe that they put into real life. And I loved his look, I loved his design, and like when he spoke, I just you like the way that his mouth movement and the way he spoke, like he did like feel menacing, and he just had this really cool like Clint Eastwood vibe to his character. So I really geeked out with his appearance in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, and then you see him, and he means business, right?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I saw him pop out, I was like, "Oh, dude, someone's gonna die." I hope it's not. I hope it's not Timothy Oliphant. I hope it's not the sheriff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but most of this episode, does focus on, we get to see Ahsoka. That's always cool. And of course, androids building the temple and Luke training Grogu. I mean, and I think there's
trying
a
to
good
eat something he shouldn't.
Yep, exactly. It's like focus on your lessons. I do like it when he crushed the little, like, what do you call it, the little droid when he was training. The little, I don't know what, the little sphere droid thingy or whatever they call that.
This training droid.
The little training droid.
Yeah, I love that. I was like, yeah, he's learning,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
moment from Cub Homage at the end where he has to choose between, does he want to stay with Luke and learn the ways of the Force, or does he want to go back and hang with Mando?
Yeah.
And it's like we kind of all knew what he was going to pick, because otherwise, why give him that choice anyway? But
there's some interesting parallels we can talk about upcoming in that, and for the next episode as well. I did enjoy like some of the callbacks to like the training, with Grogu standing on his one leg, and of course, and then Luke, jumping, doing the flips and jumps like he did before, and he looked really good. I've said this Luke does look way better than the one we got at the end of Mandalorian season 1 or 2, I should say.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff there, and I was really, it was very convincing. Good stuff. Yeah, the YouTuber probably deserves all the praise there, man. It's good stuff. If you go to his YouTube channel, incidentally, he has like some other deep fakes that he's done, like as concepts, like he put Harrison Ford in Solo. You should check that out. And, like, it's not bad. He's very critical of his own work, I noticed. So I guess that's the way artists are, right?
Yeah,
You know, be satisfied with your product.
and I used to, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I used to have this weird problem with like, them, like movies putting in actors that have passed away and just like deep faking, like Rogue One, how they had Carrie Fisher and Moff Tarkin in there, and it's like, I mean, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, like, it looks fake, and these actors are no longer with us to like, portray those characters, and I feel like at that time the effects were a little bit, especially when you saw their face in the light, very fake. And with this one having, you know uh Mark Hamill do the voice of Luke, of course, and kind of be like that model for the facial structure, getting his face down to the T, and even in the light, like his mouth movements and everything look pretty legit. Like I'm a little bit more of a believer of them, doing techniques like this, just like to what you just said, putting Harrison Ford in Solo. It's like, man, had Solo come out like around this time, maybe they could have gotten away with Harrison Ford like reprising that role, just have the body double and do the deep face CGI. So it'll be interesting moving forward, like how often they use this technique in Star Wars with certain legacy characters, like, I don't know, maybe showing a younger Lando get involved in a storyline at some point or something.
Yeah, but we already got a younger Lando. We got Donald Glover.
That's true. That's true. But we need like at this point in time, in the time frame, we need Billy D. Williams with a deep fake de-aging.
Yeah. So, to change the we did the whole Luke thing, and then we switched back to Mando doesn't actually visit Grogu. He just drops off the
mail.
Because Ahsoka.
We know it's a chain mail, so we must just say the chain mail. He drops off the chain mail, and that's
Ahsoka. Remember, like Ahsoka convinces him that it's not in Grogu's best interest for him to visit, because he's learning the ways of the Force here. And one thing
he's also conflicted, right? Like he's conflicted. That's what I think she mentioned something about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it would cause more confusion if you saw it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But one thing, sorry.
I don't know. It's just like Ahsoka's presence. Like the character was fine, but everything she was kind of speaking a lot in more aphorisms than actual, like actual genuine sentiment here. It's like she's basically there to basically say, nope, you can't go see him yet because like the plot doesn't allow it. That's kind of what I felt like a lot of what she was saying basically boiled down to.
Mm-hmm.
And also when it comes down to like Luke's like speech to Grogu at the end, on one hand, I'm kind of disappointed that Luke is still kind of adhering to the whole like, oh, the Jedi need to be cloistered off and like forsake all attachments,
right?
Because like that worked out really well for his dad, and you kind of think he drew some kind of like he kind of wanted to rethink that, but it was still nice of him like to at least give Grogu the choice about like what does he want now that he's had some experience with Jedi training. What does he want to do? And one hand it was kind of a foregone conclusion, but at the same time it was nice that he left that he gave him the choice, that he did give him the choice right there.
Yeah,
and also just that hey, it's like anyone who's familiar with Lone Wolf and Cub will recognize like that's basically the same choice that Ito Ogami gave to his son before he took him on the Assassin's Road.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think Grogu is Yoda's son?
Nah,
I have no reason to believe it. There's zero like anything.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I mean it's kind of hard to pinpoint the timeline in which Grogu witnessed the execution of the Jedis in his temple.
Order
like
66.
was that actually Order 66, or was that like
it had to be?
or was it after the Order, in which like, okay, we took out the main Jedi temple at Coruscant, now we're gonna go around like, wiping out all the other Jedi in the galaxy? Because it's like, yeah, Order 66 came out and they wiped out all the Jedi that they knew of within Coruscant, but then there had to been Jedi temples, libraries, like whatever, scattered across the universe. And I mean, I kind of agree with you guys. I mean, just given the background setting and where Grogu is at, like it looked like a Coruscant style Jedi temple. But for all I know, like that could have been something somewhere else on some other system. And when the Order went out, just like every stormtrooper, clone trooper went out and searched the galaxy for every trace of Jedi to wipe out. So it's hard to tell like where he was at. But bottom line is, I don't necessarily think that's Yoda's son, because after episode 3, that's when he dipped out and it's like, I got to go into hiding. This is the Jedi have lost. And when did he have time? When did he have time to hook up with Yaddle?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that. By the way, in that flashback or the memory that he helps him remember from that, some people have speculated that the Jedi in the middle could be Jocasta Nu. And I'm not sure. I can't say. I can see how they're, after rewatching that scene, I kind of see that, but nothing's conclusive.
I have no idea who that Jedi is.
The name is familiar. It's like I'm drawing.
Jocasta Nu was like the librarian in charge of the archives.
Of the archives, okay.
Yeah.
The old lady.
Yes, the old lady. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, it's like I think she showed up in Charles Soule's Darth Vader series.
Yes.
That's what I'm.
So she was
actually
still alive, right? She survived.
Yeah, and
not very long though.
And she called out like Darth Vader as Anakin in that comic, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so because that was an entire possibility that people recognized. I mean, it happened before. Ahsoka recognized Darth Vader.
Yep.
So, anyway, so interesting, like little bits and stuff like that, and I wish we got more. But Mando eventually leaves and he goes to Boba's palace and all that. So we got all of them. He goes and he's like, I need more men. He goes to Freetown. Right, to
not Moscow, no, Freetown.
That's right. Now he gets corrected by the bartender. I forget his name, but he gets corrected by him. But he's like, yeah, well, don't know. But I think eventually at the end he convinces him. Cobb Vanth. He's like, yeah, you guys need to come down and help us because the Pike Syndicate's just going to overrun everything. And he already had a run-in. We saw that at the beginning of this episode. And what did he do with the spice? He just tipped it over, by the way, right? He's like, that thing will be, you could buy this town for that much. And he just tips it over and lets it blow in the wind. So it gives you an idea of his priorities and his loyalties.
Drug money right there. He wants nothing to do with that.
Exactly. You're like, whoa. Mando, he's like, cool, recruited him, but we're not done. This is where Cad Bane comes in afterwards, and you see him in the horizon. And I know, Myron, we kind of talked about this before, but did you figure it out? I didn't figure it out.
No, I when the
I was like, here comes trouble. I don't know who it is.
Dude, when I saw the silhouette with the brim of the hat, I had my suspicions. Like, no way, dude. Like, they didn't bring him in here, did they? And sure enough, when I heard him start talking, I was like, oh snap, it's Cad Bane. Because that initial shot in the silhouette, I'm like, who's coming? And it got closer and closer, and I couldn't tell until like you saw that brim of the hat. and that and of course, like, watching Clone Wars right now, like that was like my first inclination when I saw that shape. I was like, oh dude, that's got to be Cad Bane. And so that's how I guessed it. And yeah, like I said earlier, like it was so dope to see him in a live action setting.
Yep, sure was. And then he had his deputy over there. His deputy, went first and he died. Man, I'm just saying, that's it. But Cad Bane says something pretty interesting to me. What does he? What does he tell? What does he tell Compay? Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer that worked that worked for the Empire. Is that basically what he said?
Essentially, yep.
Yeah. So, and it's like he's not wrong.
No.
He's not wrong.
And, yeah, it's like, I mean, like there's nothing like in the series actually to contradict what he's saying. I mean, one of the interesting takes I've read about the series post, after the final episode is that, well, like Fett really hasn't actually changed since since we last saw him in Return of the Jedi. And a lot of the challenges he's faced are based on the fact that he's really not cut out for the role that he's trying to do. He's just a violent thug, trying to go into business for himself, and just kind of failing at it because he's not really good at the whole wider management stuff. So,
yeah, that's true.
But that being said, he's a violent thug who is really, really good at what he does, and that's kind of what makes the final episode work as well as it does.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get some more, verbalization of like Boba Fett and why he's doing what he's doing. In other words, what I'm saying is like explanation of that. We can kind of connect the dots and say, yeah, well, basically he's changed from his prior self. That's definitely one way to do it. So. But because there has to be some explanation. His time with the Tuskens, that's definitely, that's about a pretty good argument for me. Any more exposition? Sure, I'll take it if you want to explain more. I'm good with that explanation, frankly. So, and I didn't.
I got nothing. I was just thinking it'd be interesting if we get a second season that just starts off with like everything in Tatooine is just basically like devolved into like warring sex, like between him and Sean, because like they couldn't find a way to work things out.
Well, I suspect if they truly have driven off we haven't talked about this, but in the last episode, if they've truly driven off the Pike Syndicate, that essentially, well, who's next? The Hutts didn't want to come back and take Tatooine. They're like, it's bad for business. War is bad for business. Okay, but now that's that, are you going to try to reclaim it again? I kind of think that could be a direction that could go. But before we jump too far ahead, I mean, like, the last episode of the season, episode 7, was another solid episode in my opinion.
Yep, definitely.
Delivered on like a lot of the payoff and like a lot of things like you were kind of hoping to see, like and even like the series had some ropey action sequences like up to this point. A lot of what we got here was pretty solid.
Yeah. You get to see Mokshais, who's the mayor. Right? By the way, he's voiced by Robert Rodriguez.
Who also directed the episode.
Yeah. And so, let's see here. Yeah, so we know war's coming. We know the big conflict, and that's what this episode essentially builds up to, So, and of course, we get the X-wing that flew in, and you're like, will we see Luke? Nope, we're just gonna see R2-D2 flying back.
Yeah,
which we know that droids can fly ships. That's not a problem. So
Yep, and we see a little Grogu popping out, and it's like, oh man, there goes my poppin' Grogu X-wing fighter by Hasbro, launching Christmas holiday 2022.
Yeah, that's right. You might even buy one.
Maybe he has a Happy Meal toy at
For
some
sure.
point.
For sure. Huh?
Maybe it's a Happy Meal toy at some point.
Oh yeah, and I'll be all over that. Like, let me get the toy for like $2-3.
Yep. We do get to see at least round one of what do you call it? Boba Fett and Cad Bane. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
He's built. And Boba Fett believed that he had built himself up quite a good alliance. Not true. I kind of thought like, yeah, they're so agreeable. I don't know if they really would. And I'm not saying I predicted that, but I could say, when I saw that, I'm like, go either way. They can all turn on him, and that's what wound up happening. Like, the Trandoshans turned on him, and just
everyone turned on him.
Everyone turned on him.
Well, they are competitive gangsters, so like it's no surprise.
Yep. So yeah, so we're treated to some long overdue conflict and battles. You get to see Kersantin just tearing it up for him and all that other stuff, and just it's just cool stuff. And of course, the Mando and Boba Fett fighting side by side, back to back. That's kind of cool stuff.
That was cool. That was cool. Seeing them fight together, back to back. Dual jetpack, shooting from the air. Like, man, that was that was like something straight out of a video game. That was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Good stuff.
Yeah. The real high point is when Fett takes off during battle after the battle droids come out, and they're just kind of tearing up his like this the the counterattack that the Freetown people have brought in.
Yeah.
And then
Fett did come in.
Yeah, and then Fett gets an idea, and it's like, yes, he has Mando to hold the line for a little while, and then he comes back with the Rancor, which is something like we knew it was coming after his thing was introduced back in episode 3, and it pays off pretty well because the fight between it and the droids, like, it's pretty sweet.
And how did you feel about that when you saw that, Myron?
Like, again, and this will probably be up. I'll probably like touch on this, during the wrap up conversation. But as a Star Wars fan, I was like, oh, cool, like Rancor kicking ass, and like this is what I said in the beginning. When Boba Fett was setting up his squad, it's like you can't be a real gangster if you don't have a Rancor in your pit, because you're dropping people in there and it's not as scary. So to actually see the Rancor actually like wreck some shop and do a little bit more than just being a puppet eating, trying to eat Luke. Very interesting to see how those creatures move. And it made me think too, like, man, maybe if that Rancor Kickstarter on HasLab came out like during or after this episode, maybe it could have hit those goals. Yeah. But
it would have needed like an additional Grogu figure in order for it to really pass that.
Exactly, and it's like, hey, if we reach this goal, you'll get a Danny Trejo action figure instead of like a Pigman. But I thought it was like, again, entertaining, but yeah, I mean there was a lot going on in these sequences, and those battle droids too, like I thought were really cool looking, like really well designed. But then it's like, aren't these like Imperial droid like no, they're Trade Federation.
Yes, they are correct.
They're Trade Federation droid technology. So it makes me think like, are
just
these
a lot bigger?
Yeah, are these what are these? I'm sorry, what is this race called again? That's selling the spice.
The Pikes.
The Pikes. Like as we've gotten further into this in the season, the Pikes kind of remind me of the similar race that the Trade Federation viceroy is from. So I'm starting to wonder
Yeah.
if the Pikes are from, that are tied to the Trade Federation in some sort of way.
Oh, what do they call those guys? I know who you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool to see the kinetic shields, like working like you would expect them. On the
Yeah.
That's the way they're supposed to be.
Mhm.
Kinetic things. Slow enough kinetic things can penetrate the shield, but it's the high fire or the high kinetic stuff blocks it. So I like
Right.
that. I like that's just kind of consistency with what's already been established. So, but yeah, these things are pretty amazing. So
the ending fight sequences, a lot of them were cool, except for the biker gang, which I could do without. Like, I tried to defend them in episode 2 or 3, where I was like, yeah, Boba Fett needs some street thugs. No gangster could be without some street thugs. But when I saw them like riding their bikes and fighting, they just kind of reminded me of the neutrinos from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those hip daddy-o kids from Dimension X with the greaser, flying Chevy and shit. Like they kind of really felt out of place to me in this episode, like as characters within the Star Wars universe, and it just reaffirmed my dislike for those characters. I wish they kind of did without them.
By the way, I would say I might have been the only person who kept rooting for the Rancor to eat a pike.
Yeah.
I was like, eat a pike, and he did. I was disappointed.
Was anyone else on this chat sad when the pigmen died?
Oh, the Gamorreans?
Yeah.
I no sweat off my back. I was like, okay, they pushed them off the edge of the cliff.
They're kind of disappointed they went out like chumps, It's like, I feel like they needed to sacrifice to show you that the Pikes meant business, and turns out that these nameless Gamorreans, their number was up.
Yeah, they're disposable goons, but man, that's kind of sucked, dude. They were loyal with Boba like from the jump, and they went out, to fight for him. But it's to be expected. They're like cannon fodder kind of characters. So I did feel a little bit of sadness that they both died. I was like, oh, they were there since the beginning. Joe Pig and David Pig. That sucks. So.
We do get a final showdown though with Cad Bane and Boba Fett.
Yeah, I kind of.
And what did you think?
I thought it was a little bit weak. I wanted more of a shootout, because it's been a minute since I watched it, but didn't Cad Bane show up, go away for a little bit, run away for a little bit, then come back at the end to have this showdown and say, oh dude, I can't remember what he said to Boba, but I thought the shootout was weak, and I don't know whether or not to believe if he's really gone or not.
That's a good point.
Because for such a badass character to finally be introduced into the real live action Star Wars universe, for him to go out that quickly, I have to believe nah, he didn't get shot in a vital organ or whatnot, just because those characters have so much history, and it was only alluded twice within this season. Once when you said he's like, Boba Fett is a cold-hearted killer who worked for the
Empire.
The Empire, and then he called out Boba Fett too in their showdown, you've changed, and he's like, I've grown. They had a little dialogue back and forth, kind of diving into their history, obviously showing how they know each other. And for those who don't dive into other Star Wars lore and other mediums, they don't know how Cad Bane and Boba Fett are connected. Boba Fett rolled with Cad Bane's crew after Jango Fett was beheaded, and he was an orphan. So
he mentored him. He mentored him.
Yeah, and you don't get that from this you don't get that from this show at all. You just get an allude to it, and I feel like those who haven't watched Clone Wars or Bad Batch aren't going to appreciate the significance of this show.
Yeah,
Well, speaking of someone who-
their
Being
conflict.
someone
right?
who watched the Bad Batch but hasn't seen Clone Wars, like I had an idea who Cad Bane was going into this, but all the business about him, like his history with Boba Fett, was something that I basically like read in all the articles like after he showed up in episode 6. So it's kind of like, this sounds like it's like an interesting conflict for them to build upon, and I kind of wish that they had brought this up, had introduced him into the series sooner, so they
Right.
could have touched upon it more. It's like as it is, it's just like, this whole like conflict. Imagine like you're able to fill in like the gaps. It's like in between like the conflict they're having in episode 7 a lot better than I am. But I don't know. It's like it's a little disappointing like for them to like just trade on like assumption of knowledge here rather
And
than
to your
just
and to your point, Jason, like you just saying that, like I feel like Cad Bane shouldn't be dead, and Cad Bane needs to be like the big bad of season 2 if they're going to do a season 2. Like Cad Bane, I feel should have been like the ultimate like villain for Boba Fett in this series, but we didn't necessarily really have a clear direction of the big bad, in this series. It was just the Pikes and their bad space drug dealers who were messing up, the way of life and the economy in Tatooine. And so, like, oh, go ahead.
given their history, what they needed here was like a Heat style sit down between the two of them at some point for them to like try and hash things out. It's like an acknowledgement of their shared history. See if like we've worked together. It's like you grew up under me. It's like does this really have to come down to us? Just like shooting it out in the streets. It's like that's kind of like what we really needed.
Yeah, but obviously we weren't going to get that since your show got hijacked by your way more popular successor, and so there wasn't enough time for you, even though your name's on the title. So maybe we'll get to that at some point in time.
Now we'll just have to like assume that Fett stabbed Bane in a non-vital region for his alien species.
Yeah,
yeah.
That he's just basically like going to be moldering in like the like in the cell in like in his in Jabba's old palace.
Yeah. We don't know that alien anatomy. He could have stabbed him in his appendix, and that's something you don't need. So he could still be alive.
Yeah. Bad news for his gut flora, but I'm sure it's still survivable.
Yeah. I'm hoping that we'll see. I don't know that he's dead. I thought that the conflict between that final fight between them, there's a lot of exposition like in the fight, which is always an interesting thing. It's like I'm like, have I seen this before? Okay, so but it's all right. I don't think it was horrible. I wish it was more. I wish there was more action to it than what I saw, but I'm not too disappointed with it. And I do like there's some there's a little bit of difference in the history there. Like okay, Cad Bane, he is. Remember, Cad Bane's an old dude. Like he is.
Yeah.
He's like. I think he's like in his 80s because he was around during like we said, time of the Clone Wars, and he was like in prime as a bounty hunter then. So it's that's a lot. I mean, you're an old man. So, however, I think some other people have speculated that that he may be alive, and you know what, they may do something with that. I did think it could have used more. I think the fight could have used a little bit more like teeth, so to speak. Like a little bit more threatening actions here and there. Although I kind of like the conclusions of the fight personally. I'm like, okay, yeah, hey, okay, use your gaffy stick. It's a sign of your whole, your whole change of heart. Going along with the thing I mentioned earlier.
He took out Bane with the symbol of his growth.
Yeah, something that he didn't, something he didn't expect, which is good. I think that's actually not too bad. But I did, and I think the wrap up scene here, where, so I like that. Bottom line, The wrap up scene where the Rancor goes like what King Kong essentially. I didn't mind that either. He kind of goes crazy. Tries to eat Din. He just bites his helmet.
Yeah, there's nothing that Beskar armor can't deflect.
Yeah. But then, and we find out in the end that size matters not.
Exactly.
And again, yeah, if they put out a statuette of Grogu and the Rancor sleeping next to each other, yeah, I'd probably. It's a cool scene. I'm like, yeah, that's not bad. Or a piece of artwork with it. Yeah, I'd do that. Sell me that.
It's coming. Mark my words.
It'll be a good smile statue where it's all like anime style and cutesy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a maze ball. Man, it's just cool. It's like, you know what? By the way, this has really helped me to appreciate Rancors more. Not just because the Grogu's sleeping next to it, but I'm like, I want a pet Grogu. I want a pet Rancor. Not Grogu. I want a pet Rancor. That sounds cool. Now that I found out that it's just more than anything, it's just cool. One of the final scenes we get in this episode is essentially Shinnok Fan just annihilating all of the council of the different areas of Mos Espa, the Trandoshans and everyone else, right?
And the Pikehead.
And the Pikehead. And the mayor. Don't forget the mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor got it bad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, got it bad. Like, yeah. So, just crazy. I don't know if Boba sent her to do that, or this was just kind of like
we saw her
thing.
We saw her take off in the earlier in the episode, so we assumed that's what she was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can't remember if he specifically sent her to do that, or if he just acknowledged that was her plan, and he just acknowledged her to go ahead and go and take these guys out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're fighting a battle on two fronts. We've got to take care of this and that. So, but I mean, yeah, and it's cool, and we're treated to scenes of Mando and Grogu in his little space bubble.
Yeah,
begging for a hyperspace jump. And we have to see more of that.
Well, not a hyperspace jump. It was like that special, speed movement and shit can do.
Oh yeah, the one where he outran the X-wings with, right? Yeah, that thing, the little boost. Yeah, whoa. So not a hyperspace jump, but still, yeah, cool. There was.
About whether or not Bane is dead or not. It's worth noting that the series only went out of its way to show that one character was, who we thought might have been dead, was still alive at the very end.
I'm glad Chrysanthemum was all right, but you're talking about Cobb Vanth. Cobb Vanth was the guy who was in the back to tank. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And
then we had the guy from Suicidal Tendencies there, so we know he probably had some reconstructive something or other, right?
He's got some robot parts now.
Yeah, he's got some modded parts now, which I don't have any problem with in this universe at all. It seems like people just get modded parts, like people go to the dentist or something. It's like modded parts, cool. So very cool stuff though. So Cobb Vanth ain't dead. So we'll see him again. That's good. Yeah. So overall, what did you think of the entire season?
Much as I enjoyed, watching the episodes individually, I don't know, it just does feel kind of, it's a weird series to kind of take in. It's like in retrospect, because looking back, you kind of realize how ill-suited Boba Fett seemed to be for the role of crime lord, in terms of it's like
organizational skills and planning. And even like there were some there's definitely some solid scenes, and I liked the stuff with the Tusken Raiders. It's like early on, it's telling when when the stuff with the Mandalorian, like episode 5 and 6, that turned to be like by all means, we should be complaining about, oh man, it's like he's distracting from the title character, but no, it was actually really good to see Mando and Grogu in those 2 episodes. I mean, those are kind of like the high points of the series, and also with the final episode, did do a good job of wrapping things up. I mean, for the stuff that I kind of irks me in retrospect, it finished strongly, and that really counts for a lot in my book, or any book really.
How about you, Myron?
Overall, I did find this series enjoyable, especially as a fan. Seeing how Boba Fett is evolved and seeing the background on how he survived with the Tusken Raiders and stuff like that. But I was talking to my buddy Eric earlier today, and we had this exact same conversation, and it's he brought up that he just felt this season was just all about no purpose, it was just content, and it was just content that something to put out on Disney Plus, Star Wars related, and just to put out to not necessarily shell out for merchandising and marketing, but he felt that this season didn't have a purpose. And after talking to him, I'm like, okay, I kind of get your point of view, because then it started making me think why did Boba Fett want Jabba's seat? What was the purpose of him wanting to be a daimyo and Tatooine? Was it to actually make it better for all the races on that planet, even the Tusken Raiders? I still don't have a clear picture of what his drive was to become a daimyo and take over Boba's palace. But at the end of the day, like I said, I really did. It's all about the Mandalorian, and we've had this conversation before this podcast about how Boba Fett is your dad's Mandalorian. Everybody, all the boomers love Boba Fett. Everybody loves Din now. Din is the Mandalorian. He's the main one we want to see, and of course, everybody loves Grogu. So I mean, if you look at the ratings for each episode of this series, it's the Mandalorian focused ones that are higher rated. And
you're talking about on IMDb.
Yep. And so I really did, me personally, I really did enjoy those episodes, because even after season 2, I'm I can't wait for more Mandalorian. And obviously too, we've had these conversations where oh man, Boba Fett got jacked for his show, and I feel we didn't really get to know this modern Boba Fett as much as we should have. So again, sum it up, all in all, found it entertaining and I liked it, but I wish it kind of had a little bit of a different direction and focusing more on Boba Fett, and not necessarily taking the attention away off of his motives and tossing in Mandalorian in there to steal his show. So
yeah. But still overall good.
Yep. Yeah, I pre-ordered some figures, so it did its job.
My own opinion on the show is that it's too bad. Just to comment on these things, is if you only watch the movies, you don't know who the hell Boba Fett is, minus maybe what Kat mentioned at the end, a cold-blooded killer that worked for the Empire. I think that definition pretty much fit what most people thought of him. Like a bounty hunter. Does a bounty hunter have morals? No, they don't have morals. They're in it for the money, right? It's like the next buck. So what'll be? So Boba Fett's one of those interesting characters where, okay, if you read supplemental material, it makes the equation in this a little bit more weird, because you're okay, he really is a cold-blooded killer.
Mm-hmm.
Why this? So outside of that, just looking at it, and minus the whole Mandalorian tie-in, which is really good. I love the Mandalorian episode in this. It's great. It's good stuff. It really is. Makes me want to watch more of the Mando. And to your point, um, Mandalorian fights like what we think Boba should be fighting, but he never really did.
Right.
Think about that. He never really did. He kind of remember the episode of the Mandalorian where Boba is just knocking out stormtroopers with his gaffy stick.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kicking ass. We're like, yeah, he's supposed to kick ass. So now you add that in, right? Even adding that in, it's kind of like it's still unclear as to what his motive is, and I think that's an accurate. It's still kind of there, although things are said, like and he's different. And I think Myron, Jason, you and I kind of talked about this. It's like a change of character for him. We both agreed on that, and which is not unheard of in fiction or science fiction or whatever. It's just like, okay, sure, it's good. I don't see. It's very hard for me to think of him in that context in some ways, but overall, I think the series is good. I think it's fine. It's just kind of not quite what I expect. I was like, okay, so what are we gonna get? Oh, we got this. Okay. Maybe there's something else that'll come. I would like to see. What I would really like to see is I'd like to see more emphasis on conflict. Other things like Boba Fett is not he has a history. Let's maybe in the next season you can show me more of that history. We got little pieces of it here, but it's in my opinion, kind of unsatisfying pieces, like the Cad Bane thing. I mean, it's fun. I love Cad Bane. I think he's a badass. I'm it's hard for me to connect from what little we got. It's okay.
And see, that's the problem. And I think it kind of not necessarily on the Marvel side, it's more so on the Star Wars side, in which there's a lot of great Star Wars stories out there that are stretched across comic books, video games, cartoon series, and things like that. But when they're all canon and they're all stretched out, a lot of these Disney Plus shows are adding tie-ins to characters and stories that happen in another medium, and people don't know that. They don't play video games or watch cartoons on the reg like that. So it's I might have more of a backstory on Cad Bane since I used to watch Clone Wars than you or my buddy Eric or Jason, and you guys might have a better backstory on the Jedi Order from comic books or whatnot. So I think that's kind of also a problem when you create a series, a television series, kind of tying into other material that your general audience isn't probably cued into. That's where it kind of drops. It's only the diehard fans that are gonna kind of know oh snap, they reference this or they put in this character. And so that's why if you watch the Marvel television shows too, same thing could be said about that if you've never seen any of the movies or any of the other tie-ins that makes that episode that much more special on what Wanda said or what Loki referenced, things like that. And so you just got to be, these shows obviously are geared towards the fans, giving fans more content and more stories to look forward to. But if you're getting into this, you got to get into the whole franchise and watch everything that Star Wars has to offer to really get a lot of that to get a lot of that context. So and at the same time, to your point, John, it's I want them to explore a little bit more of that in season 2 if that is a viable option, or story plot where Cad Bane hasn't died, because even in the cartoon, I don't really think there was enough time to really focus on that as well. So we'll see how it goes.
And I gotta admit, just asking everyone to asking a reviewer to
be invested in everything that Star Wars has to offer. It's like, to get the most out of it. So that really is asking too much at this point, because there's just like so much sprawl to it. I mean,
exactly.
Even with like all the Marvel universes, like Marvel Cinematic Universes accumulated history, they're still asking you to just like follow stuff one at a time. Like a movie, then a TV series, then another movie. It's like you can just like follow this like in sequence. It's like, but they're not asking you to go. Oh, you got to go and like what's the spin-off animated series, the comics. It's like, I can't believe I just said that, because they Marvel does do like cinematic tie-in comics, but they don't matter at all to like getting the overall story. All you do is just watch the movies and the TV series in sequence, and you'll be fine. But
yep,
because I guess because it all comes down to like that issue of sprawl. It's just like there's just too much spread across so many different mediums to take in, and for all that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done, it's at least done a good job of keeping everything sequenced, and just like what you need to what you need to watch. Like, not like asking it's not competing with itself in terms of like the movies and the TV series. You can just watch them one at a time, as they come out.
And I can agree with you there too, because I feel like Star Wars is actually like almost mandating its audience, like, yeah, you have to go back and like, know this material. Because look at like Solo, for instance, and the appearance of Darth Maul. It's like, oh snap, Darth Maul's in there, and it's like, wait, I thought he died in like the Phantom Menace, and I'm like, nah. If you watch Clone Wars, like he actually survived, and he has a robot lower torso, like a android lower torso, and he became a crime lord. Like, what? I didn't hear about that. Like, yeah, you got to watch like 2 animated series to get the effect of it.
I could watching the movie, I could accept that as a big surprise twist, but I was glad that John was on hand afterwards to explain, like, oh wait, this is actually how he survived and what happened to him afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of that. And, well, maybe it's sort of like they're hoping. Remember, Dave Filoni? That Clone Wars. Like he did it, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of overlapping direction too here. So he's pulling in characters, and that's fine. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of like, yeah, you may be missing some pieces. So my judgment of the series is like, how critical is that? Like, Bad Bane. It's like, oh, okay. So for some people, this is their first time and last time they might get exposed to this guy. Right. It's like you kind of get he's the bad gunslinger bounty hunter guy, but that's about it. You don't get much else. So,
and see now, and one thing that I can appreciate and recommend to people, all this stuff is in one place for you to watch, whereas before it wasn't. You can if you want that context, you want that background, it's all up on Disney Plus too. So if you spent the time to watch Mandalorian or Boba Fett, because even there's a backstory to the Darksaber, from our conversations we had before, like the Darksaber is covered in Rebels, Clone Wars, and it's covered in other aspects too. So I think it's worth people's while to check out those materials and get that background, and then you can start appreciating more of what like some of these shows are kind of tying in.
Yeah, I think so I noticed this, and I can't vouch for it, but if you do have Disney Plus, they have a section just for you if you're interested in the Clone Wars. It's called the Clone Wars Essential Episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's more of a truncated, it kind of cuts out some of those episodes that you don't need to see, like like when like when the droids go to the planet with all this really tiny people and stuff.
Yeah.
Or they go and they have like other adventures. They go to this planet and that, like, you don't need to see that. Like, maybe it cuts it out, because I can't tell you for sure, because I haven't really vetted that list that they made. I just noticed it was there. So if that's it, that's enough. If they put enough in there just to help you connect the dots, that might be a good, and so Jason, if you do have it, you might want to consider that, because they're just hitting key episodes that'll help color it. So I think that's good. Instead of you going through 7 seasons, because they released a final season last year of Clone Wars, trying to filter all this stuff out, So
yeah, because that's why that series was a little bit hard to watch. Like, I still haven't even finished it, but like in the beginning, there's a lot of fluff episodes in there too, like filler episodes. Like, I don't want to see a whole episode where like it's all about C-3PO and Jar Jar trying to find Padme, or like I don't want to see like a full episode like focused on these characters that don't matter. So I mean, that's why a lot of people I've talked to who watch Clone Wars or Star Wars fans, like, yeah, I have some friends that are like, oh dude, Clone Wars all day, best series. But then there's some like myself who haven't been able to truck through it because at the time I think the only source was Cartoon Network, and then I have a couple of the Blu-rays, but then there was also like a lot of like episodes in there that kind of like threw off my momentum for like wanting to finish it out. But if they have something curated that just focus on like key points of the story, whether it doesn't pertain to necessarily Boba Fett, but there's like key points of the story or key point episodes within the Clone Wars that really expand the Star Wars universe like on very deep levels, and that's why I've always appreciated that show.
Yeah,
and it actually made Attack of the Clones like a lot better. Like when you watch the Clone Wars, you're just like, oh, I kind of wish they did the movie based off this, but it kind of does make me appreciate Attack of the Clones a little bit more.
Yeah. Absolutely, because it helps color the whole mythos, right? So it's got that going for it. So if you really you're the Uber fan, you can watch them all. But that appears, like I said, not to be necessary. So that's cool. And I'll have to watch through that list just to see if they're right on, So just out of curiosity, so. I'm sure that some Star Wars fan has made up their own key episodes of what you should watch in the animated stuff. Instead of slogging through 7 seasons. I'm not saying it's a slog. I'm just saying it's just that's a big ask for anybody, even if you do marathon that stuff, right? So,
well, one of these days I want to do it.
All right, we can do it. That's for sure. We can totally look at that. One of my interesting things about the Clone Wars is there are some character development arcs in there. People die, just clones. But then there's also the whole lather, rinse, repeat. So people accuse some shows Sailor Moon of being the monster of the week. I can't say that Clone Wars is the monster of the week, but it tends to repeat themes a lot. So that's my biggest thing. So what do you mean by repeat themes? It goes from hey, Count Dooku is suppressing a planet. Well, let's fight on that planet and make sure that they don't get suppressed. It's essentially half of the series, I think.
Yeah, that's because the what is it, the council, not the Jedi Council per se, but the Republic is trying to get systems to join their cause, and of course Count Dooku is trying to get people systems to join the Separatist cause. And so you're right, it's just repeats, meanwhile on planet blah blah blah, Count Dooku is trying to recruit this planet, but they're being difficult, so he's suppressing them, and the Jedi Order comes in. And so I do agree with you there. In the beginning of the series, there's a lot of rinse and repeats about that.
Yeah, especially with Grievous losing and not. It's he's leaving. It's like Team Rocket.
Yeah. Blasting off again.
Anyway. But yeah, I'll have to watch that list and then see if that's good. I haven't looked at it. I was able to resubscribe to Disney Plus and the bundle plan, and the reason why is because, it's cheaper because, and then there was stuff I wanted to watch on ESPN Plus, but that's not for this podcast. So
That's for another podcast.
that's for another podcast. So maybe none at all. I don't know. I don't have a sports podcast, so I'm not going to start one. There are plenty of people who do that. I'm not that. Science fiction and anime. Anyway, anything else, fellas?
It's like I would like to point people out to Polygon's article about Boba Fett when one person tried to rationalize their opinion, their feelings about the show by saying the book of Boba Fett is so much better when you realize Boba Fett is a series villain. Which
I haven't read that. Go for it.
I think you sent that to us.
Yeah.
I did send you guys a text to that article because basically it basically talks about how Fett's approach to like being like the daimyo of Tatooine is kind of like very wrongheaded and it's like and poorly thought out. And you know what? And it tries to like take that and turn it into a positive instead of a virtue. When you realize that, well, it's like, hey, it's like he is basically, he wants to be in business for himself, but at the same time he's got no real leadership or organizational skills. He's just got this idea that he wants to do, and he goes about it using all of his violent thug techniques. So when everything does blow up in his face, as it did in the last couple episodes, well, that's when like this take kind of like makes a certain amount of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an interesting read, even though it's like watching the show. I really don't think that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were going for that. It's clear they wanted you to believe that he was like growing as a character, but I don't think they quite pulled that off, and that's what gives rise to like articles like this and me going, this makes your thoughts intrigue me, and I would like to subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah,
so
I'll have to read it for sure, because it's like I wasn't going to attempt to do the mental gymnastics I do like with Star Trek, and just say, yeah, well, here's the explanation for that and that. But it does intrigue me because I'm like, okay, let's hear it. So I will give you my opinion on that article for sure.
Yeah. So basically, if this does get a second season, and we find out that Tatooine is basically turned into like a battle-scarred battleground, like between like Fett and all these other like different factions. It's like then, well, just point you back to to this article and say that Tasha Robinson, she called it back in the day. So,
Yeah.
but I did like the series, and I would like to see where they go in season 2, whenever we get around to it. But at the same time, the series probably did a better job of setting up Mandalorian season 3 than it did telling its own story, if I'm being truly honest.
Most
about my
definitely.
feelings for it.
Then you know what? I can't disagree with that opinion at all. I think I'm eager to watch The Mandalorian. I want to see what happens here.
Here.
The Foundling. My own theories on it, because that's totally open game, is that he may not. Well, we know some things, like unless they decide to completely retcon out all of the stuff that they established in the sequels. Like the Jedi school or whatever, Grogu more likely won't be there. There's some things that you can kind of conclude. But then again, it doesn't necessarily preclude the fact that he doesn't want to be a Jedi either. It just means that that's what he chose.
Right.
Let me explain. Right. So, in The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, I think it's like Obi-Wan's Force Ghost, like, don't do that. Where are you going? Why are you doing that, Luke? I gotta save my friends. To harken back to an earlier point to, what you were saying, Jason, it's like, things don't have to be run the way they used to. Why does Luke have to hold to the, toe the line? But essentially, it might be outdated, for the Jedi Order. It's like, okay, so yeah, I can't say. But it's a good call out there as well. So
I think Kylo Ren is proof of that.
yeah. And I know that there's way more material, unlike the comics and other stuff, that's canon, that talks about the motivation of certain Jedi and where they stood, and versus in terms of and how far maybe they drifted, just because or so yeah. I know that's a thing, but I'm not gonna go through all that right now. Um, you know, and that even the old Jedi Order, had its problems, right? So it's and you see it somewhat in the prequel trilogy, but still food for thought, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
all right, guys. I think we've pretty much we've talked to this one as far as we can. It's been fun reviewing the Book of Boba Fett, and I think the next thing we'll do is whenever. Well, there is Obi-Wan that's coming up.
Yep,
Not until
coming
May,
out
though.
Yeah, not until May. But I'm looking forward to that. So this will be fun.
Same.
I hope. And this is going to be, it's pretty much they've given us the description on this one already. It's taken place after Order 66, is it? Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, he's on Tatooine.
Yeah.
But as far as other stuff before that, like Moon Knight comes out at the end of March.
Oh, Marvel stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, it's not a Marvel podcast. Just kidding. Sorry, we have talked a little bit about it here, but yeah. So, but when we talk about the Star Wars stuff, yeah, it's fun. I don't know, Obi-Wan. You know what? We could get flashbacks there too. So there's that. No, it's not. It's not out of the realm. We can get flashbacks of earlier times. So, anyway, guys, I think this has been fun, and we'll talk to you later.
Night, everyone.
Have a good weekend, kiddies.